شوف شوف لا والله حربية طيارة حربية طيارة حربية شوف 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 شوف.
Three developments related to the Iran conflict, and they are all massive. First, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has just confessed that the U.S. decided to launch an illegal attack on sovereign Iran just because Israeli terrorists had made up their mind. This is the most explicit confession by a member of the U.S. administration on America being an Israeli colony. Then Tucker Carlson has just revealed the Saudi and Qatari authorities have arrested Mossad agents as they plan to bomb these countries and then blame Iran, and then Iran have continued to pound Israeli cities with more powerful missiles. As expected, Israel's much-publicized Iron Dome has been rendered useless. These three topics would be the key focus of my video tonight. Also in my video is a chilling warning from an American professor to Trump to not go against history in his delusional desire to have regime change in Iran. So please stay tuned. But before I start, let me just share this breaking news which is just happening right now as I speak. The U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia has been set on fire. The Iranians have claimed responsibility, saying they hit the embassy with ballistic missiles and drones. The U.S. Embassy has issued this statement on Twitter just a few seconds ago, and I quote, "Subject security alert, shelter in place, U.S. mission to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, March the 3rd, 2026. Location Saudi Arabia event security alert. The U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia has issued a shelter-in-place notification for Jeddah, Riyadh, and Dhahran, and are limiting non-essential travel to any military installations in the region. We recommend American citizens in the kingdom to shelter in place immediately." End quote. This is a breaking news, and I will come back on the story as and when I have more details. Elsewhere, the U.S. has confirmed the death of 6 soldiers now, and this number could increase significantly in days to come. Remember, the Iranians had claimed to have killed or wounded over 500 U.S. soldiers. This explains why Trump is desperate to have a ceasefire, but the Iranians have rejected this offer. Don't take my word for it. This is Steve Bannon, a prominent MAGA supporter, kind of their spokesman or leadership spokesman. He's not a religious cleric. He's saying we have no interest in talking right now. The president said, "Hey, I'm open to talk." He said it the other day, but they're not interested in talking. So how do you get your off-ramp or your hey, let's get this done in 24, 48, 72 hours instead of 5 or 6 weeks? That punch, you have to have somebody on the other side to actually talk to, let them do a transition, get back in a room and talk about their nuclear program. How do you do that? Marco Rubio, whose official title is the Secretary of State, but the guy is nothing less than a street thug. One thing you must commend Donald Trump for is his sheer ability to handpick the most uncouthed, uneducated, and morally bankrupt individuals as cabinet colleagues. Trump is...
شوف 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 يا واحد شوف هذا المسير يا الربع
شوف نزلوا هذول ايرانيين مدري شنو.
He's a genius when it comes to discovering such a rare talent. So Rubio has just admitted on camera that the decision to launch an illegal invasion of Iran and then massacre over 500 innocent people, including 180 plus girls from an elementary school, was primarily to help Israel. First, have a listen to this guy's crazy confession. United States conducted this operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting. I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question that's been asked is why now? Well, there's 2 reasons why. Now, the first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond and respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact it bared to be true because in fact within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north for that matter had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces, and we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't happen. What does he say? His boss, an utterly deranged and depraved man, has been telling us that the reason for attacking Iran was to stop the Islamic Republic from acquiring nuclear weapons. Not that this would justify his crimes against humanity, but this is the reason he gave even tonight. Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Following our obliteration of Iran's nuclear program in Operation Midnight Hammer a short while ago, we warned Iran not to make any attempt to rebuild at a different location because they were unable to use the ones that we so powerfully blew up, but they ignored those warnings and refused to cease their pursuit of nuclear weapons. But Rubio is now telling us that the illegal invasion of Iran had nothing to do with Tehran's nuclear aspirations. According to him, it was to help Israel, meaning since Israelis had already made up their mind to satisfy their genocidal urge, the Israeli colony, i.e., the US, had no option but to join them in their carnage and mass murder. How are Americans happy about this? How can Americans be fine with these maniacs deciding the fate of their and their country's future? You do not have to be a Democrat or a Republican supporter to find this absolutely nauseating and revolting. These lunatics are taking such a crazy decision, not keeping the interest of Americans in mind, but the interest of Israelis. The same Israelis who have historically survived on American taxpayers' money. So first they sucked into the US taxpayers' money, and now they're using the slaves in the current US administration to sacrifice American soldiers' lives to fulfill their genocidal agenda. Why must this be acceptable to any American, regardless of their political affiliation? I showed you in my earlier video just how clueless Pete Hex was when he spoke to members of the media. Moments later, when his boss attended a public event, he was no different. Immediately after his brief rant on Iran and the death of US soldiers, Trump moved on to talk about his beautiful plans on the renovation of his ballroom. That's how insensitive this deranged man is about the loss of American soldiers. Thank you, everybody. We have a lot of great service members here with us, too, in this beautiful building. Isn't it beautiful? We're adding on to the building a little bit. We're improving the building. See that nice drape? When that comes down right now, you see a very, very deep hole, but in about a year and a half from now, you're going to see a very, very beautiful building. And there's your entrance to it right there. In fact, it looks so nice. I think I'll save money on the doors because it can't get more beautiful than that. I picked those drapes in my first term. I always like gold, but I think we can save a lot of money. I just saved curtains, but and it'll be spectacular, be the most beautiful ballroom. I believe it's because I built many a ballroom. I believe it's going to be the most beautiful ballroom anywhere in the world. And when you hear all that hammering out there, you know why the First Lady is not thrilled. Exactly. Meanwhile, Tucker Carlson has dropped a bombshell by revealing the dirty design of Mossad agents. Tucker says that Saudi Arabia and Qatar have rounded up several filthy Mossad agents after they were found to be planning to bomb key infrastructure here. They would have then laid the blame on the Iranians. Now, that wasn't a risk from the Israeli standpoint. That was the point. They wanted to diminish the Gulf, and in 2 days they have. And I think anyone who likes decency and order and cleanliness is hoping that the Gulf will recover. The Gulf is not a threat to us. We have military bases in these countries. These are some of our closest allies. All of them are closer allies than Israel by far. They're our friends. But they've been really hurt. And in a place like Dubai, which is basically, it's part of a country, it's an emirate within the United Arab Emirates, but it's also it's a luxury brand. Basically, people go to Dubai because it's beautiful and rich and clean, and above all, because it's safe and orderly. It's got the busiest airport in the world. You start seeing video and Instagram of smoke in the Dubai airport, and you're like, I think I'm going to Cabo this year. Oh, sorry, drug cartels, whatever. Maybe you go to Sedona this year. It really, really hurts these countries, and Israel wanted to hurt these countries. That's the point. Wanted to hurt these countries, wanted to sow chaos and disorder because they are rivals of Israel. So it's probably hasn't been reported, but it's a fact that last night in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, authorities arrested MSAD agents planning on committing bombings in those countries. Now that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Why would the Israelis be committing bombings in two Gulf countries which are also being attacked by Iran? Aren't they on the same side? No. Israel wants to hurt Iran and Qatar and UAE and Saudi and Bahrain and Oman and Kuwait, and they've succeeded. Why is this important? Because a key Saudi oil facility was bombed a few hours ago, and Iran was quick to clarify it had no role in this bombing. Could this have been the handiwork of Mossad? This doesn't sound implausible. Meanwhile, Iran has fired more ballistic and hypersonic missiles, causing widespread destruction in the settler colony of Israel. Iranian missiles are finding absolutely next to nothing resistance from the so-called Iron Dome. You can watch these videos on our Telegram channel or UpScrolled social media page. Iran's decision to choke the state of Hormuz, destroy key American military facilities, and bomb the infrastructure of U.S. allies in the region have already adversely impacted energy prices globally. Oil prices today jumped from $70 a week a few days ago to nearly $80 a barrel, while shipping through the critical oil lanes in the state of Hormuz came to a grinding halt. This is just the beginning. Wait until this further contributes to the skyrocketing of oil and gas prices in the Western world. Inflation here is bound to go through the roof. And then they would perhaps realize if being genocidal against the Iranians was worth it. I will leave you with the warning from Professor Robert Epe from the University of Chicago. He has some urgent advice for Trump if his brain is still functional enough to pay heed to this professor's warning. I have studied every air campaign since World War I. This is my specialty. I spent 3 years teaching conventional targeting strategy for the U.S. Air Force. I've studied leadership decapitation in detail. I've modeled the bombing of the regime change in Iran for 20 years, so this is something I know quite a bit about, and literally 10 days ago I started on Substack The Escalation Trap because I worried exactly watching the armada being built, we would fall into the escalation trap. And that's what's happened. We are now in the grip of the escalation trap, or the smart bomb trap, to be more precise, where the illusion of the 100% tactical success, which is real, it's the success of the bombs blowing up the targets, is not false. It creates the illusion of control of escalation, and that is the smart bomb trap. And that is what has gripped us right now. And the problem is that once we dropped those bombs, and once we announced regime change as our goal, and we had no other tools trying to do this from the air, this has never worked in over 100 years. This is not like it works sometimes or rarely works. I'm choosing my words carefully. President Trump is up against the weight of history here. That's it for me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism.
صدناه يا الربع لو نازل من البرشوت صدناه هذا البرشوت يا الربع حق طين.
Police? Yes. 1 minute. 1 minute. لا شبه الدبه. 1 minute. 1 minute. 1 minute. بلغ الدوريات.